gotta be detailed, precise, and informed.
That's DPI.
Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. I'm Zach, and that is Tyler over there. And we are back with more draft coverage. This is our second episode of draft coverage this month of April. And we have both the AFC South and the NFC South. So we're doing both South divisions for you this week. And in addition to both of those divisions, we're going to cover some more calls that changed the game towards the end of this video. Tyler, break us down. What call are we covering? And then we'll get right into the draft coverage.
We will eventually cover in my opinion, the worst call in NFL history. That is a 2018 NFC championship game between the Saints and the Rams. It is a infamous no pass interference call. If you know what we're talking about, you know what we're talking about. And if not, we will get to it.
And it's our favorite. We love no calls or calls of pass interference. It's some of the most frequent stuff we get to break down as far as ref calls go. But that will be towards the end of the video because we're going to get right into our main content this week, which is our draft breakdowns, our first round breakdowns. Now, there's a few teams in here that don't have first round picks, and typically we're breaking down the first round. But I do have some notes and some discussion points for Tyler and I to go through so you all 32 teams still get covered, and you fan of a team without a first round pick still has some names to look out for on day 2. But without further ado, we're getting right in to the AFC South. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the teams if your team has not been covered yet. But we'll start with the Tennessee Titans, who pick at number 4. Tyler, go ahead. Who do you have at number 4 for the Titans?
So all off season so far, I have been having them select Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love. However, our content last week actually changed my mind as to what Jeremiah Love's outlook is going to be like. And so I actually have Tennessee selecting a linebacker from Ohio State. I have them selecting Sonny Styles. I've actually got Sonny Styles as the second linebacker off the board, but I have Tennessee selecting that linebacker out of Ohio State. I think there's going to be a lot of linebackers picked in the top 10.
Yeah, and Sonny Styles is interesting because he just essentially broke the raw athleticism score for an off-ball linebacker. And so, I mean, I think he does bring a little pass rush juice, but it would be one of the higher selected off-ball linebackers I've ever seen. Arvell Reese is more of a hybrid pass rushing style. That's why he's going so high. But I would not hate if the Tennessee Titans went Sonny Styles, and I don't hate your analysis there either. Is there a reason why you moved off? Because last week we kind of discussed, hey, we know the Giants with Harbaugh are going to take an off-ball linebacker. Why do you think that Robert Saleh is going to be so high on a guy like Sonny Styles?
So Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese as well. Like I said, the only reason I have Styles going Tennessee is because I have Arizona taking Reese. But both those Ohio State linebackers are just such freak athletes. But the main reason that I have them going Sonny Styles over, like I said, Jeremiah Love, the reason I made that switch is because so many there isn't anyone mocking Tennessee to take a linebacker. CBS and Mel Kiper predict David Bailey, an edge out of Texas Tech. And then NFL.com says Arvell Reese as well, that linebacker. There just isn't going to be teams, or excuse me, there's not a lot of analysis that continue to say Tennessee is going to take an offensive player. It really does seem to be one of those top edge or top linebackers that a lot of reporters are going with.
Yeah, and I'm also going to kind of take the same approach that I did with the Giants, where I predicted that they would go Sonny Styles, because I mentioned his name earlier already. Robert Saleh is the new head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and he was previously a head coach of the New York Jets, and he was previously the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. So one of the reasons in favor of your analysis of them going Styles is he had Fred Warner, and Sonny Styles compares a lot to Fred Warner. Good size, great speed, great vertical, super athlete, going to be a great linebacker. Maybe he wants his Fred Warner. But when Robert Saleh was actually a head coach, his first round picks were both edge rushers for the Jets. Jermaine Johnson was selected as an edge rusher. He's more of like the hybrid linebacker. He's more of the Arvell Reese type edge rusher. He's actually traded for Jermaine Johnson this offseason, right? So that leads me to believe that he's already got his hybrid edge rusher. He drafted the guy back in 2022. He traded for him this year. So now he needs another edge rusher that's more of a traditional edge rusher. And that's why I think a lot of the mocks are saying David Bailey at 4. And I absolutely agree with him. David Bailey is the best pass rushing defensive end in the draft. I think he's got like a 98 PFF pass rush grade, which is one of the highest I've ever seen. And he would be the perfect fit in this Tennessee Titans revamped defense. But I see your argument. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just think that David Bailey should be the selection over Styles.
I agree, but my mock draft 1.0, I have David Bailey going number 2. So like I said, I have a lot of edges and linebackers going in this top 10, but David Bailey, Arvell Reese, and Sonny Styles are all going to be hits if the Tennessee Titans selects them. It really just depends on who gets selected at number 2 and number 3 overall. Who's available.
I honestly agree with you. I think that, and we agree that Fernando Mendoza goes 1. We talked about that last episode, but then it's a matter of Reese or Bailey. And I think one or the other will go at 2 and 4 because number 3, I don't think an edge will go at 3. You're just saying if Bailey goes at 2, then it will be Styles rather than Reese, and Reese will fall lower.
Yes.
And I got it. So, but Tennessee, either way, no matter if they get any of those 3 guys that we just kind of talked about, I think they're getting a really talented player. I think all of those guys are excellent.
And Tennessee has a lot of cap room as well still. So the offseason's not over yet. There is still ability to sign some free agents that are out there. There's a lot of hope if I'm a Titans fan. That there's a lot of hope and ability, I think.
Definitely. There's only one other team in the AFC South that has a first-round pick, and they are the Houston Texans. They pick at 28. And I labored over this pick. I had some offensive linemen here, and then I switched to defensive linemen, and then I switched back to offensive linemen, and then I switched back to defensive linemen, where I ended up on a prospect that I think is super fascinating, and it's Caleb Banks out of Florida. Not sure how much research you've done on him, Tyler, but
sorry, go ahead.
But he's 6'6", 330, and he plays interior defensive lineman. So he's really lengthy, right? But he can't tackle. That's it. His deficiency. It's like that Moneyball scene. It's like, what's his one deficiency? It's like he has a weird arm angle. Yeah, Caleb Banks just can't tackle, which you would argue is a pretty integral part of being a defensive lineman, right? Is tackling. Would you say?
A little bit.
But in the late first round...
So let me ask you this for the viewers real quick. Let me ask this question for the viewers. If I haven't done research and I hear you say he can't tackle, what does make him a first-round draft pick?
It is the fact that he is one of like 5 humans with these traits and builds. When you watch his tape and when you look at the way he plays football, the laws of physics should prevent someone this big from moving like that. And so it's kind of like, when you can get a guy, it's almost like in the NBA when you can get a 7'6" player. Like, is he going to be the greatest shooter from beyond the arc or mid-range? No, but he's also 7'6". So there's clearly some applicable skills that you can mold and make him a good interior football player. That's what Caleb Banks is. And when you have the best pass rushing duo in football with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, both top 5 as far as PFF grades are concerned for pass rushing, I think that adding a super freak athlete with great traits, crazy length and good athleticism. I mean, it's going to be hard. I mean, at 6'6", 330, he ran a 5.04 40-yard dash. I mean, it's very, very fast.
Yeah.
And it shows up on the field, too. It's not just 40 speed. He's got quickness laterally, and I think that you can't really pass up somebody like that. With 35-inch arms going up against guards, he's just going to be able to control them and move them wherever he wants. So maybe he's not going to make the tackle, but he's going to move somebody who's weaker and smaller out of the way so that Daniil Hunter or Will Anderson can make the tackle, you'd hope, or one of their great linebackers in To'oto or Aziz Al-Shair. But I like Caleb Banks in that spot. Who do you have them taking? Because this is nobody really knows where to mock this guy because he has deficiencies, right? I'm just putting him here.
Sure. And actually, CBS Sports actually agrees with you spot on. They have Caleb Banks going to Houston at 28. The guy that I landed on is Caleb Lomu, an offensive tackle out of Utah. He's 6'6", 313 pounds. The Texans, I think, have struggled to really get their franchise tackle ever since the departure of Tunsil a couple years ago, and I really think they need to protect C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud ran for his life last year, it seemed like. They need a good tackle, and I like Caleb Lomu out of Utah.
Additionally, the acquisition of David Montgomery would lend them to, build up that offensive line because Montgomery thrived when he had a great O-line in Detroit. So it would stand to reason that, an offensive lineman, it is a big need for the Texans, maybe even a bigger need than defensive interior position. So I don't hate that at all. Like I said, I went back and forth between tackle, guard, and defensive interior position. So I will say usually I lock in picks, but this one is the one I'm less sure about, right?
Sure. And once you get to the 28th pick in the first round, so much can happen. I mean, does Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle, get taken by then, or is he still available? Because if he's taken by then yeah, maybe they go D-line. But if he's available, then they go get Proctor. So those first 10 picks, by the time we get to draft pick, we usually know who's going to maybe go in that top 12, top 15, just maybe not the right order. After that, it just becomes who's going to throw the deck of cards out the window and throw everything off.
Right, exactly.
But offensive line and defensive line do seem to be where the Texans are going to go, just depending on availability, I think, also.
Agreed. Like, it depends on who's there. And one of the reasons I put Banks there is because I think he'll be there. We don't know if Lomu will be there. It depends on how many if there's a run on tackles from 8 to 17 or to 23, I saw a lot of like Max Hedgador mocks for the Texans, another offensive tackle. And I saw a lot of people saying, hey, the Texans might just trade down. And I don't know, maybe they do. But
they are known for making some pretty big first round trades. Just a couple years ago in Kansas City, they had pick 2 and then traded to go get pick 3 also. So it wouldn't shock me if the Texans make some kind of crazy trade.
Yeah, that was a very aggressive move. But speaking of not knowing, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was wild because I was in Kansas City when that happened. So on the screen they're showing C.J. Stroud, who had just been drafted number 2 overall, and then you see trade. Texans are on the clock, and the whole crowd just goes, "Oh!" And they're showing C.J. Stroud on the board or on the screen. So he turns out, he's like, "What happened? What?" He's trying to figure out what did the crowd just react to? And the initial rumors was that C.J. Stroud had just been traded away after and that's how they got the number 3 pick. Which is absolutely nuts. I can't wait for the wild story of this year's draft, if it's the Texans or someone else.
And speaking of, you were in Kansas City. Would you happen to be at an event that we're covering this year for that's DPI? Would you like to give the viewers a little preview of potentially what we could be doing that evening?
Absolutely. So that evening, the Kansas City Chiefs are hosting a private draft fest at Power and Light District, and Zach and I have secured our place at that private event. It is not open to the public, but it is open to us. We will be at Power and Light District on Thursday, April 23rd, covering round 1 of the draft from Power and Light District in downtown Kansas City, and we are very excited for it.
That DPI on location has an early. We won't be going to Pittsburgh for the actual draft, but we will be doing some live kind of content about what the Kansas City Chiefs do for their season ticket holders. So excited to be covering that, a kind of a surprise first episode of That's DPI on location. But moving on, speaking of hard to predict, the Jags and the Colts both are without their first-round picks. The Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, traded one away to go get Travis Hunter, and the Colts traded one away to pick up Sauce Gardner. Neither trade really helped either team. Jags didn't go super far in the playoffs, and the Colts didn't even make the playoffs. But we'll start with the Colts, who currently have a top 50 pick. So at 48, and I think that they're going to draft a linebacker here. It's hard to say which linebacker will be available. I mocked Jeremiah Trotter earlier to another team without a first-round pick. Okay. We're getting
Peanut sighting.
Yeah, Peanut sighting. She's here. I did mock Jeremiah Trotter, but he's another guy that could go here. But in my notes, I have Anthony Hill from Texas. He was a great run defending off-ball linebacker, 6'3", 240. And I think that he could make an impact on that Colts defense, which is already really good. I think the Colts are a really complete team. There's not a glaring need that's staring up at me. They have a great line, good running back. They have a quarterback. And they are they're just going to add talent. And I think at 48, that's what you have to do, just kind of pick best player available. But what do you think about them adding a linebacker?
I like that idea. I think an edge rusher could also be a possibility that they add as well. Like you said, there's no glaring issue. So if the first round has a lot of edge rushers if the first round happens to have a lot of linebackers, then some of those late first round edge rushers are suddenly available to them in that second round, or vice versa. If there's a lot of linebackers and edge rushers, maybe a wide receiver could possibly be available. It just depends. I hate saying it just depends on the picks prior to them, but that really is what this coverage is when you don't have a first round pick. But linebacker or edge would be the positions that I would look out for the Colts.
But now moving on to another AFC South team without a first round pick. Their pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars, is at 56. So they're even outside the top 50 because they did so well last year, but obviously they did not go as far as they likely would want. And I have them also going linebacker because you have to replace Devin Lloyd, who they lost in free agency. And he was a cornerstone, of course, had that incredible pick six in the Chiefs game, right? I mean, it's one of the plays of the season for a linebacker, and they have to replace that production somehow. And I think they go with Jacob Rodriguez if he's available. Once again, it's a huge depends on the way the board falls before them, because Jacob Rodriguez was, according to PFF, is one of the best linebackers in college football. I think he was in the upper 90s in terms of PFF grade. So I would be curious to see where he goes and if the Jags would even consider trading up for him or something like that. But once again, linebacker is who I have them going. But do you have any thoughts on maybe who they go with?
The departure of Devin Lloyd is huge, and they do have to fill that. I don't think they'll trade up. I think all of the linebackers that you really got to go get are going to be those first-round linebackers. I think once you get out of those early to mid first-round linebackers, anyone from round 2 and 3 is going to be very consistent. I think teams go with a lot more need rather than pick selection, if you want to call it that. Like, there's a difference between pick 20 and pick 9 as to who you can take. Once you get into that second round, it doesn't matter. It's all based on team need, and they do need a linebacker. So I
Well,
don't think they're going to trade up to go get him.
Yeah, but the reason that they would consider maybe doing that is he had a 93 defensive grade per PFF, best for any off-ball linebacker, better than Sonny Styles. 94.8 run defense grade, best of any linebacker, and a 92 coverage grade, best of any linebacker. You're saying, why isn't he where Sonny Styles is? Because he's 6'1", 235, and he didn't blow minds at the combine, right? So clearly he's a great football player. He's super headsy. He was the green dot at Texas Tech, but with a 4.57 40 and a 1.6 10-yard split, he's not the super athlete that would, cause you to really reconsider taking a linebacker, a low positional value guy, maybe earlier on in the draft. So I think the second round's a good spot for him, and Jacksonville would be a good fit for him.
I want to change what I just said 30 seconds ago. I just did some live research. The Jacksonville Jaguars have 11 total draft picks. If he is available early in the second round, yeah, I can see them going up to trade them. So yes, they do not have a first-round draft pick, and I don't see them trading into the first round. But yes, I can absolutely see them trading up 5 spots to go get that guy, given the fact that they have 11 total draft picks. The Jaguars
100%.
will trade somewhere.
Yeah,
they will not draft
moving
11 players.
For sure. And I think they have to build on their season last year and add talent where they lost it. And I think priority one should be middle linebacker, because there wasn't a great free agency option. I mean, the best free agency option was their free agent, right? Who went to Carolina. Yeah. So I think that they have to prioritize that, and getting someone in the top 50 where they currently do not have a pick in is probably where they need to sit. But any other analysis? Did you like what I had to say about Rodriguez and his upper 90s, mid 90s PFF grades for every single important kind of category?
He's not a guy that I have a ton of research on, to be honest, but those stats are definitely something that could be very valued. And if the Jaguars can see that and they're 5 picks away, go get him. He sounds like a freak of an athlete. Go get him.
94 tackles and 4 picks. Sounds like a guy that Devin Lloyd that would base his play off of Devin Lloyd, so he could almost replace him as early as his rookie season. At least the Jaguars, that would be the hope for them, despite the fact that he's undersized. But I think we can safely move on to the NFC South.
I think we're going to go from a team that does not have a first-round pick to the 8th overall pick in the New Orleans Saints. This becomes a lot more predictable as to what can happen, because there are only 7 guys that are going to be off the board. Who do you think is going to go to New Orleans?
I'm seeing a lot of discourse around the Saints selection, because at 8, undoubtedly there's going to be a blue chip guy available, probably one on both sides of the ball. So it's a matter of, if you're the Saints, who just finally were rescued from cap hell, congratulations to the Saints. But now they have to build on what was a fairly successful rebuilding year last year. They found a lot of guys that I think they can build around, one of which is their quarterback, Tyler Shuck. I think he showed a lot of flashes. And so I have them going offense, and I have them going playmaker to help out Tyler Shuck, and I have them going Carnell Tate, wide receiver out of Ohio State. He was one of the top 6 graded wide receivers according to PFF. I think he's one of the top 2. Him and Mekhi Lemon keep flip-flopping for number 1 receiver in the draft. And for me, Carnell Tate being 6'3", 195, he profiles a little bit like a CeeDee Lamb kind of guy. And so I think that that's a great spot for him to go top 10 and help out another successful Ohio State wide receiver in Chris Olave, right? The Saints have history of drafting Ohio State wide receivers and helping out their young quarterback. If you can build around Shuck, if you can give him playmakers, I think you could really succeed in what is a weak division. So go and get Tate. I think he's the best receiver in the draft. He has the highest upside. So that's my guy. But who do you have?
So I think your analysis is really good, especially given the Saints head coach. He was a former quarterback himself before transitioning into coaching. So he, of all people, knows the value of getting help for your quarterback. But I actually have defense going to New Orleans at the 8th overall pick. I've got Ruben Bain Jr. in edge out of Miami. There's a lot of mock drafts that predict Ruben Bain Jr. He is going to be a guy that, like you said, is going to be one of those blue chips that's available. And I think he's so good to pass up. I think there are a lot of wide receivers that you can go get in the second round to be just as helpful for their quarterback. But there's only going to be one Ruben Bain. And if he's available at 8, I think you got to go get him.
I don't hate that, and I think there are three realistic choices for the Saints at this spot: Caleb Downs, Ruben Bain, and Carnell Tate. Those are the guys and maybe Mekhi Lemon if you put another wide receiver in the mix, because I think those are the top 2 wide receivers. So I would not hate Ruben Bain if he was selected here. I think teams are overthinking Ruben Bain, and he should go higher than 8. So getting him at 8 is a steal already. And I would say the same thing with Caleb Downs. So I think the Saints are in a really good spot to get a really good, talented player. I just think that with a quarterback like Shuck, they would be advised to build around him with elite wide receiver talent, whereas maybe they could select another edge like Zion Young out of Missouri or Gabe Yakus from Illinois, for example, in the second round, get some edge talent. There's also some edge talent still available in free agency, like former Saint Cam Jordan, but maybe they're not going to go after that because they don't want to get back into cap hell again. But why do you think edge over receiver? I guess is my question for you.
So what I'm seeing from PFF is that the Saints could really improve on the edge. Obviously, they have Cameron Jordan, but last year he got a 76 PFF grade. He got 24th among 115 edge rushers, which is good, but
they let him go.
What they have on edge, yeah.
He's not on the team anymore, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. But okay, my ADHD brain went too fast for my mouth. Yes, that's what Cameron Jordan did. And now they don't even have that. It's kind of where I was going with that. So if the 24th best edge rusher was the best edge they had last year, and now they don't have that, edge is where they need to build on.
I agree. They did bring in Chase Young, who's a veteran at that spot, and I think will be a productive player for them, especially with his 86 pass rush grade that he had last year for PFF. Allow me to read the wide receiver room that the Saints currently possess. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Chris Olave, everyone knows and loves. Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Jalen Polk, Ronnie Bell, Samori Toure, Kevin Austin Jr., Damian Alford, Elijah Cooks, and former Bronco Devon Vele. Wow. That's really bad. There's not one startable player outside of Chris Olave in that group, in my opinion, especially with a rookie quarterback. That's the reason I'm going Tate here.
By no means am I saying that they are set on wide receiver, but I think at pick 8, there's a lot they can do. And I think there's a lot of wide receivers that they can go get early in the second round. I think there's a possibility of Denzel Boston being available. I think Casey Conception from Texas A&M will certainly be available. And then there's a couple other SEC wide receivers that I think could also be available for them. I just think if you go get a wide receiver. Now, don't get me wrong, if Tate's available, I am not against them getting Tate. But if he happens to be gone, or even if Bain and Tate are both there, I think you can go get just as good of, or maybe not just as good. That's not what I mean. I think you can still go get a very solid, quality starter on day 1 wide receiver on day 2.
Yeah, and this
day
is
2
so
of the
hard
draft. That's the reason that I would pass at wide receiver at pick 8.
And this is really hard, obviously, because on Daniel Jeremiah's rankings, his NFL media 4.0, his versions of his rankings that he posted just a few days ago, he has Carnell Tate as the 6th best prospect in the draft this year, and Ruben Bain as the 7th best prospect in the end. So, like, we are right on the money. I feel like we're this close to knowing who the Saints would go. It's really a coin flip of whether they want to build around their young quarterback or pair Chase Young with Ruben Bain and have a more dynamic pass rush, because I do think that Ruben Bain will instantly elevate this room. And he's 21 years old. His future is really bright in the NFL. So certainly two great options. We're just kind of debating. It's not like either of us would even be wrong. Like, I think that the Saints would be happy, thrilled. And Saints fans, please let us know in the comments if you wouldn't be happy and thrilled with either of these players. But I think you guys would enjoy if either one of these guys was taken, as long as they can find a way to address it later on. You brought up some alternatives like Denzel Boston. I brought up some alternatives like Zion Young. I think that there exists got two guys in the top 50 that can fill both of those needs for the Saints. It's just a matter of which one will they prioritize, right?
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to the next chronological pick here in the NFC South, we have a top 15 pick, number 15, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tyler, I'm going to let you take this one first. Who do you have these guys selecting?
I have another edge rusher that I want to discuss for this pick, and it's Akeem Mesidor, also from Miami. So I'm really high on these Miami edge rushers. There's a lot of talk about Tampa going to get that guy, Mel Kiper, and then a couple writers from NFL.com all like Akeem Mesidor as well. He's someone that I think is a perfect fit in Tampa Bay and a perfect fit for the 15th overall pick.
The reason I reacted like that is because I also have Akeem Mesidor going at 15.
Right.
So not a lot of debate here. He was the 3rd highest graded edge defender in college football last year, with a 90.5 run defense grade and a 91.7 pass rush grade. He's a complete 3-down player at 6'3", 280 pounds. The only downside, as I'm saying all this, I'm sure you, the viewer, and you, Tyler, are like, why isn't he going any earlier? Because he is 24 years old, soon to be 25, I think, before the season starts. That is a big detractor, because really you may only get 1 or 2 contracts out of this guy, but that's what makes him the perfect fit for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because they have a veteran quarterback in Baker Mayfield. They have an aging defensive core and offensive line core as well. So I think that it's the perfect time to get an impact player now who you don't have to worry about developing. You can really plug and play him day one. And he would also fix a problem that Tampa Bay has, which is they just don't have a dynamic enough pass rush. A lot of teams have that problem, as it seems. So getting a guy like Mesidor helps that a ton. Instantly.
And what's also really fun is if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, Akeem Mesidor is absolutely the name you need to remember, even if your team doesn't get them, because so many analysts are mocking them. We are mocking him to go there, and so is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A day ago from their website, Brianna Dix, a staff reporter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, mocked Akeem Mesidor to their team. So that's absolutely the right answer, at least for this prediction.
Yeah, I mean, NFL.com mocks him like a ton of people. I think it's almost too perfect of a fit for them. And I really, really like him to Tampa Bay. I don't like him to Tampa Bay because he'll make the Bucs better and harder to beat. But I like him for Tampa Bay because he will help their team out a ton. But not a ton of debate there. I mean, is there anybody else that the Bucs could consider? Another edge rusher if Mesidor goes, at 12 to Dallas or something like that. Like, is there another guy that we could really consider them selecting?
One of the mock drafts that I looked at is CBS Sports, and CBS Sports mocked a guy with two impronounceable names, but it's an interior offensive line. It's a guard from Penn State, so there is a possibility of that as well. I don't know how to pronounce
It's
it.
Yoni Vega, right? Vega at the end.
Yeah.
I think he's the best guard in the draft, and so interior offensive lineman is one of those positions I think doesn't typically go in the top 20 unless they're really, really good. I think Tyler Booker, the best guard in the draft last year, went 12 to Dallas, something like that. So it's right around the spot where you could expect the best guard in the class to go. And offensive line was a problem for Tampa, mostly due to excessive injuries. So maybe shoring up that position with a quality starter and then allowing whoever else was there to go to depth wouldn't be a bad choice, but I still think that edge rusher is a bigger need for Tampa than guard. There's also
I absolutely agree, and I do apologize. I do apologize to the Nittany Lions fans for not even attempting to pronounce your best player's first or last name, but the Carolina Panthers are about 3 picks later. What are you thinking for the Carolina Panthers at pick 19? It's 4 picks later.
Yeah, math is hard. You're a history teacher, so that's okay. But
yeah, there's a reason I teach social studies, not math,
But 4 picks later, the Carolina Panthers also really do need an edge. And I think that could be an option, but I have them going a little flashier. This team went 8-9, and they hung tooth and nail with the LA Rams, who got all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. I mean, they blocked a punt late in that game. They had a real shot at it. And so I think the Panthers are going to go flashy. I have them drafting athletic freak Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon, I believe, because their current tight end room of Tommy Tremble and Sanders doesn't really blow me away. It doesn't make me feel any sort of way. Kenyon Sadiq, however, does because of his combine performance. Absolutely electric 4.3 speed at 6'3". So he kind of profiles as a little bit more of that Kyle Pitts archetype of tight end, fast, almost another receiver. But he also had a 43.5 vertical leap and 26 reps on the bench. So he's not like a slouch. I think that, he could be a capable blocker, but his next gen stats have him at a 99 athleticism score. That's ridiculous. I think that, make Bryce Young have a more dynamic offense and force people to cover a 4.3 speed tight end, and this team could maybe have a winning record next year.
I actually like your analysis. I think I might change. I don't want to agree with you again. I don't want to agree with you 2 episodes in a row, so I'm not going to change mine. I do like that analysis, though. I think he's a very good option. The guy that I went with is the same guy that CBS Sports mocked, and it's unfortunately Avion Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson. I say unfortunately because I want him to be available at 29 for the Chiefs. That's who I really want. But I think he's a really good corner. I think there's a possibility of Avion Terrell going anywhere between 15 and 30. I think 15 is a very high. Someone reached for him, and 30 is he fell at his lowest. So I don't think he'll go at 15, but that's like his highest ceiling. I think he'll go somewhere in that late half of the draft. It just depends on who wants him. He's a very good, talented corner. The Panthers could definitely get some better corners as well. It's not their highest priority of a need, but Avion Terrell would make that Panthers defense better to some capacity at the very least. And that's who I've got with them. But I do hope they listen to you so that he can be available for my team.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think that Carolina is kind of one of those teams that's right in the middle where they just need to add talent. And I just have them going freak athlete Kenyon Sadiq talent, but adding corner talent I think would help this team. They were 8-9 and snuck into the playoffs, and then they added a bunch of free agents, right? They added that edge rusher from Philly, and then they added Devin Lloyd, who we've been talking about earlier on. I believe Jalen Phillips is who I'm talking about, right? So they're doing it in free agency. So, and the fact that their additions in free agency were mostly defense means that I think they want to address offense in the draft. And I know you said you already agree with this analysis. I'm just providing more color to why I chose Kenyon Sadiq going here. And I think a lot of this discussion and a lot of the reason why, when we did our mock draft on the night of the draft last year, Tyler and I's minds together got the first 8 players, not necessarily player to team combos, but players.
Because there were some trades.
Because there were some trades, but the player that was supposed to go at 3 for us went at 3. And so I think that, when we get together and we talk like this and both of us agree on something, it's very possible that that's going to happen. So maybe Kenyon Sadiq is someone that you should start watching film on if you're from one of the Carolinas.
I feel like tight end is such an underrated position that someone like Kenyon Sadiq could very easily fall to 19. And then in like a hypothetical redraft, he should have gone like 5 type of situation. He's going to be so good if he lives up to the potential that he's absolutely going to be, in my opinion, one of the best 15 players to come out of this year's draft.
Sure. And the same thing happens every year. Like, do you think that teams wouldn't have selected Sam Laporta higher than the second round, or would have selected Sam Laporta when he came out in 2020? I believe they would. He fell all the way to the second, and the Lions just picked him up, and he was immediately Rookie of the Year and, a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. And I feel like, and who can block? Sadiq, not that long ago, a guy very similar to Sadiq who lacked production. Kenyon Sadiq lacks the production that this other guy had. Kyle Pitts, we've already talked about, went very early in the draft. So it's clear that these guys have a role in the NFL. It's just a matter of, where do you take a tight end when all these other high-value positions are getting addressed in the first round, like edge, tackle, corner, So I think that they finally pulled the trigger and they select this because they don't really have a dynamic tight end at all. I don't think they have that.
And you mentioned Kyle Pitts specifically. The Falcons are our last team on this list. I apologize to my Falcons fan friend who has been waiting all episode long for us to cover his team, but they don't have a first round pick. So what are they going to do, Zach? What is happening in the ATL?
Yeah, it's tough because, once again, they traded away their first round pick, right, for James Pierce Jr., which it's not getting any better for you, Noah. I apologize, because James Pierce Jr. may not even play a down this season. He may get suspended due to, what happened this offseason. Won't get into that. But I bet they're wishing they had that first rounder back. But they pick inside the top 50. Once again, I believe they're at 48. And I think that they're going to go defense. I think they need to go front 7. They need to continue addressing their front 7 because their offensive playmakers are really good. It's probably top 2 running back in football in Bijan. Drake London is excellent when he can stay healthy. They addressed quarterback already by signing Tua to take the reins while Michael Penix Jr. is recovering. I think they have a great offensive line. Maybe some weaknesses in pass protection, but they have a solid offensive line that I don't think that they're going to address at pick 48. I think that they're going to go with Caden McDonald, a defensive tackle out of Ohio State, because they were 23rd at 48. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Is that their pick? Am I getting that right?
Well, You're right. I apologize for interrupting. I'll tell you why I made that comment in just a moment. Go ahead.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just think that Caden McDonald will help their bottom half run defense be better next year. And I think this is right around the time where you can still find really talented run-stopping defensive tackles because they're not high value enough to go in the first round. So this is kind of how you get first-round value or blue-chip value out of those second-round picks. And I think that's what Atlanta's going to do.
I like them going defense. I think it's almost a given that they'll go defense that second round. The reason that I wanted you to specify 48 is because I don't know if I missed them. I personally have Caden McDonald going in the first round. Wow. I have him going at pick 20 to Dallas. It might be a reach, but I don't think McDonald's going to be available at 48. Maybe doesn't go in the first round, but I just don't think he's going to be available at 48. Someone that I think could potentially be there, however, is Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, possibly Christian Miller out of Georgia. He's one that I think can be early second round, maybe late first round, but could possibly be available at 48 too. Any of those two guys, those are both interior defensive linemen as well.
Yeah, no, I
I
don't
think
disagree.
position at least.
Yeah, right. And Cade McDonald's certainly on the rise, according to Daniel Jeremiah, who I do often look at his top 50 picks. And so if he is gone, which is very possible, I mean, Cade McDonald has moved 6 spots up on Daniel Jeremiah's list to number 33 prospect. So he's currently the best non-first round pick in Daniel Jeremiah's rankings. So you might be right. And there might be another team, a la Kansas City, that has a pick at 40 that could address what is a very weak position for them by selecting Cade McDonald if he somehow falls out of the first round, which you don't have him doing. I just think that there's a lot of interesting talent available in those first 40 picks to where we could see maybe those interior defensive linemen slowly slip back and back and back. There's like 5 corners that everyone loves. There's like 10 edge rushers and 15 tackles that everyone loves. That nobody's really talking about the interior defensive linemen, where maybe we could see McDonald, but Lee Hunter is a great backup if McDonald isn't there.
Mm-hmm. I believe that covers our draft analysis. I do want to squeeze in one talking point that, Zach, we have not talked about, but is a big story in the NFL. If you don't mind.
Go for it.
The Raiders have signed Kirk Cousins. Now, Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1. So what are your thoughts on that signing?
I was discussing this with a friend today, and I think it's a great move. Kirk Cousins' play style is very similar to Mendoza. Kirk Cousins was obviously a later round pick who kind of developed the skills and became a premier quarterback. I mean, he's earned a lot of money over his career. Whether he's, truly deserved that money in relation to his play style is up for debate, but you cannot deny that Kirk Cousins has been a wildly successful NFL quarterback relative to his draft position. So I think that he is there purely for a mentorship role and to kind of push Mendoza in training camp, because I could see them starting Kirk Cousins if Mendoza isn't ready, But what are your thoughts? I'm curious.
That's what I was going to say as well, is it's very interesting to sign a quarterback when you are absolutely about to draft a quarterback at number 1 overall. But I very much agree with what you said about they're signing him for a mentorship role. There's a lot of teams that try and do the Patrick Mahomes approach, where they draft a quarterback and try and have him sit as long as possible, a full year if they can. And I think Cousins is the perfect guy to do that, as long as and I'm sure he does know this, but as long as the Raiders tell him that that's the plan, because Atlanta did not tell him that that was the plan, and the Vikings did not tell him that that was the plan. So as long as the Raiders tell him that that is the plan, I think it's a good move on the Raiders. Sign him for a year, have him teach Mendoza, and then Mendoza becomes the next Mahomes, ideally according to the Raiders anyway. I'm not saying he is or isn't.
Right. I think it's just funny, the fit for Kirk Cousins. If you've watched any season of Netflix's quarterback, you can see that Kirk Cousins is a very milquetoast family man. He's going to Sin City in Las Vegas. It might be the antithesis of Kirk Cousins if the antithesis of Kirk Cousins was a city. So fascinating decision for him to move his family to Vegas. But I will be curious to see what the Raiders decide to do if they do decide to give Kirk maybe the first couple of games of that year or not. But yeah, good call out there. But we do have our ref call that we teased early in the video that we want to discuss. And I have the video for you, but Tyler, you kind of set the stage for us.
So we've got a tie game inside the 2-minute warning. As you can see, the Saints are at the 18-yard line. Wow, math is really hard. That is the 13-yard line.
Oh, no.
They're at the 13-yard line. I teach social studies, not math, guys. So at the 13-yard line, inside the 2-minute warning, tie game, NFC Championship, third down. Drew Brees pass incomplete, but it is a wildly obvious pass interference. But wait, there's no flag. He was hit a million years before the ball. Obvious pass interference. We're not really going to dissect that too much because there's just no argument that it's not pass interference unless you're the guy who's meant to throw that flag. But our segment this offseason is calls that changed the rule book. And after this play happened, during the offset, like that's pass interference. Like we're not going to debate. He's not going for the ball. Like we're not going to debate that. It's obvious pass interference. But after that no call, during the offseason, a rule was changed that said you are allowed to challenge pass interference. The only caveat, a little bit, unfortunately for the Saints, is that it still must follow all other challenges, meaning it has to be clear and obvious that the call was wrong in order to overturn it, and a team cannot challenge it inside the 2-minute warning. So unfortunately, this call would not have helped the Saints because it was inside the 2-minute warning, but it is a call that changed the rule book. But it's interesting because Sean Payton, head coach of that Saints team, said something interesting after the game that might be a prophecy being fulfilled this year. Zach, do you want to read me that quote that he said in this press conference after the game?
Sure. I don't know if it was after the game or after the pass interference rule was eventually revoked, but it was at least in 2019. And so Sean Payton was quoted saying, "We're going to have a point. It's not this year, not today, but an eighth official upstairs is going to allow this game to flow. He's going to buzz that buzzer when he feels a certain level of mistake has been made." And the reason we bring that comment up, we dredged this comment out from the depths of NFL history, is because not only did that pass interference call that we just covered change the game, even if just for 1 year it did change the game is changing once again because those proposals that we covered a few weeks ago were approved, meaning that if there are replacement refs, a sky judge can call down and overrule or throw a flag or change the call of anything that they deem egregious enough in the event of replacement refs, right? So it's not in its full state, and it's not completely going to stay in the NFL, and it's not even guaranteed to happen. But Sean Payton's quote is closer and closer to becoming a reality, right, Tyler?
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned that we'll go back. You had mentioned that the rule where you can challenge a pass interference call or no pass interference call only lasted 1 year.
Yes, it only lasted 1 year. It only lasted 1 year because there were a total of 81 challenges of pass interference during that season, and only 13 times did the league overturn the call on the field. So that's a 16% success rate. That's about as successful as an onside kick, which nobody agrees that those are very successful very often. And so it was hotly debated as to why there were so many failures. The NFL cited coaches' poor judgment. But I think it's a combination of I think it's a combination of coaches kind of jumping the gun on a pass interference call, but also there are calls like this one, which was in that 2019 game between the Lions and Packers, per Twitter, where this was challenged clear before the ball even arrives, contact, roping them around, and it was not overturned. So maybe the standard for an overturn was a little bit too high. Regardless, it was an abject total failure and was completely rescinded by the end of the season. They didn't even vote on it. The NFL just took it away.
So you said that you think that you're being more generous than I am. You mentioned that the standard to overturn is too high. I think the refs are arrogant. They're arrogant, and there are so many calls like exactly that play where that is clear and obvious pass interference, and they're like, "Nah, call stands." They're not. They never followed the rule on that. I don't think the NFL refs ever, and I think once it gets challenged, it actually goes to New York, or is that just the MLB?
I think it's the booth. Whether that's
Okay.
New York or otherwise, it is the booth.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So it goes to the booth, which is not the field officials. It's the MLB where the booth is New York. In the NFL, the booth is in the stadium, but it's not those field refs. They're arrogant because so many times there was clear and obvious pass interference and it didn't get changed. And so there was this definite feeling around 2019 that the refs are not going to change their initial calls because it makes them look bad. And so, of course, the NFL would cite that it was poor judgment on the coaches or whatever their lame excuse was to protect their officials even more than they should.
Well, and speaking of the officials' arrogance, right? We have some of the demands that the NFL officials are asking for, and the reason we're even talking about this in the first place, because the officials' union is at odds with the NFL, so much so that they've essentially ceased talks, and more every day, it is more and more likely that we will begin the season with replacement officials because the NFL won't meet these three demands, or they can't come to the table on these three asks from the NFL. So, Tyler, you have those in front of you. Do you want to cover those kind of pain points that the refs in the NFL share?
Yeah. So there's the three categories are money, training, and assignments. In regards to money, the NFL offered a 6.45% yearly increase for officials. The NFLRA, the NFL Refs Association, wants a 10% instead. Whatever, you're always going to have people that want more money than is being offered. Whatever. Training. The league wants greater accountability for officials and additional off-season training for poor performers. Now, the article doesn't say if the NFL refs are trying to go against that. But that is one of the things that the NFL is wanting is more training, which I think is good. We absolutely need more training.
I think it's good that the NFL is addressing that, right? It's one of our biggest concerns.
The only defense that I want to give on refs for this one is right now NFL officiating is the only professional officiating crew that is not full-time. So if you are an NFL referee, you also have another job. Craig Ralstad's an athletic director for a high school in Seattle. So I understand maybe like, hey, like, let's not take more of my time, but the NFL does need to make it a full-time gig and then implement more training because it's a full-time gig. But the assignments one is where I really start to get mad at the NFLRA. The officials union wants the NFL to use the officials union being the refs union, the officials union wants the NFL to use a seniority-based system to determine postseason assignments rather than basing selections on their performance.
No.
Zach, you want to comment on that one?
I will comment on that one because I have an interesting point that you would find particularly interesting. Are you ready for this one? Do you know where I'm going with this?
Okay. I have no idea where you're going with this, so I cannot wait to hear what buffoonery you were about to say.
Brad Allen, following the infamous call in 2023 in wherever the hell the stupid AT&T Stadium is in Dallas, Texas, whatever. It's technically in Arlington. Who cares? Brad Allen made that infamous call, and Tyler is of the
You're
opinion.
referring to the for the audience that doesn't know.
Yes.
He's referring to did Decker report.
Yes.
He's referring to that no call
that was
or that call.
And basically cost the Lions a win. In every sense of the word, Brad Allen's entire crew and him was stripped of their ability to ref a playoff game because of that call. Essentially, the NFL admitting that he handled that poorly and screwed up. It is about as close as you're going to get to the NFL saying, whoa, that ref, he messed up. And it was about the only way, it's about the only thing they can do besides reverse the call from the booth to appease Dan Campbell, who was redder than a tomato with rage, arguing his case. I know because I was there. So the NFL kind of half admitted wrongdoing, something they never do, and barred him from a playoff game. That's good, in my opinion. The NFL should have the right to do that, especially if an officiating crew is so bad that it's costing a playoff team a win against another playoff team in what ended up being a crucial game. Had the Lions won that game, they would have been the number 1 seed that year, and who knows, right? So I think that the refs wanting that to be seniority-based rather than performance-based only makes the NFL product worse, and then them wanting no training, and then on top of these two things, they want to be paid 10% rather than 6.5. 6.5 is a sizable raise, especially when the average official makes $350,000 a year, right? So 10% would be $35,000 raise every year annually. That's nuts. That's stupid. If you want to raise, do the trainings and perform well in the field if you want to do playoffs. That's my opinion. I never side with the league. I don't like the league. I think that they're greedy. I think that Roger Goodell's international plan, I don't think he cares about players. But they're absolutely right on this. Absolutely right on these negotiations.
I thought you were going to say some buffoonery based on how you started that monologue, but I actually agree with absolutely everything you said. If I am the league, and I don't think Roger Goodell himself is the one negotiating this, but if I am the league, and these are the demands that are brought to me, I also hang up the phone. I probably say some choice words, and then say some choice words before you contact me again, and then I hang up the phone and I refuse to talk. I don't even counter because this is just absolute insanity that the NFL refs are wanting. The 10% raise, whatever. I mean, that you're always going to have that in every negotiation talks. It really does come down to the training and the assignments. You cannot consistently get worse and worse and worse every year and then be like, nah, we don't want training. That's insane. And if someone agrees with these refs' terms, please comment, and I want to have a civil discussion. I just want to know how someone can think, yeah, that's fair, the refs are right in this one.
Yeah, Tyler wants to have a civil conversation. I just want to talk, all right? I just want to talk.
Listen. I don't want to have a civil conversation with refs on this one because they're stupid. But if if a fan is reading this and being like, yeah, the refs are right on this one, that's where I'll have more civility in discussing a fan viewpoint.
I'm obviously joking, but just please, down in the comments,
yes.
if you have an argument as to why referees who are refusing
even the devil's
to do training,
advocate argument,
who are refusing to do training or have their performance matter at all, and then why that is justified in asking for 4% more. And a 6 point, we're ignoring the fact that it's not like they're getting no raise. They're getting 6.5%, which is a cost of living adjustment that is more than most Americans get yearly. Right?
Yeah.
I know mine's, I think like 2%. And so the refs are getting 3 times what the normal American gets, and they're asking for 10. That's ludicrous. And they're not even doing anything extra for it either. They're like, give me more money for doing nothing. Do training, and then if they agree to the last 2 items, I think the league would actually cave on the 10% raises. But it's the fact that they're making a stink of everything. That's the reason why the league is prepping their rule book for replacement officials. And the refs are banking on the replacement officials being so bad that they have to cave to the demands. And so the NFL is trying to curtail that by having a way to overrule the replacement officials. So I don't necessarily disagree with the league, the way the league's handling this, because the refs should not be able to hold the league hostage whenever they want to. I think that's bad.
No, I agree. I agree that they tried doing it during the last time that the negotiations went out as well. back in 2012. I believe that was the last time that they had contract disputes. They had replacement officials. It was bad. And the only reason it got solved is because the refs were like, see that fail Mary? Don't you want us back? And they're like, crap, we need you back. Now they're not going to have that.
Yeah, the NFL, to their credit, learned from their mistakes. And this is how the NFL continues to remain the most profitable sports league in the United States, and I think in the world, getting close, right? Or they may be number one. I think they're number one.
At least in the United States, they're
number one of the
them,
U.S.
Massive gap, and then the rest. I think in the world,
I think it's
FIFA. I think is more popular.
I think that it's actually the Indian Premier League, but that's a whole nother conversation. I was looking at a chart recently, but we don't have to get into that because I don't actually know if my facts are right there. I'm not detailed, precise, and informed enough to answer that question or debate that topic. But
we are only detailed, precise, and informed about the NFL, not the Indian Premier League.
Right. And if you liked our detailed, precise, and informed analysis, please comment down below, what your thoughts on our draft and our ref discussion, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our ref calls that change the game or our draft coverage up until the draft. So thanks a bunch for watching, and we'll catch you next week.
Appreciate you guys.